the lifestyle of buying and selling used for the environment. So I made a video about 6 months ago that was the benefits of buying and selling your higher priced items used for your personal finances and how this can completely transform your financial situation and how it relates to minimalism. But in this video, I wanted to recreate this, but specifically for the environment. And I really can't emphasize the importance of this because I think if we look at what has gone on over the past 10 or 15 years with the environment, as far as people talking about it, it almost feels taboo to make a video on something positive you can do for the environment because it gets spoken about so often. But throughout all the years, I've really never heard anyone talk about the environmental benefits of buying and selling items used rather than new. And I don't know if this is because, certain government organizations or environmental agencies don't really want to talk about slowing down consumerism, but I just know it doesn't get spoken about enough. So in this video, I'm going to delve all into the subject of consumerism, buying and selling your items used, and how this can really not only help your finances, but also help the environment. And the reason why buying used is so vital, so important, and so effective is that very few people take into account the economic toll and the environmental toll that happens when you purchase an item new. So when you have a newly manufactured items in your hand, basically what has occurred is that there has been a massive amount of fossil fuels, non-renewable resources, water, human capital, and energy that has gone into producing that item. And very, very, very few people acknowledge that. In fact, nowadays, so many people are literally throwing items away and putting items in the landfill so that they can buy environmentally friendly items. People will get rid of their gas guzzling car and they will buy a Tesla or an an electric vehicle so that they can stop using gasoline powered cars. But what very few people consider, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think what a lot of people don't consider is that the environmental impact of production of that Tesla, the manufacturing of that Tesla, the fossil fuels, the energy, the human capital, the labor that went into that has a massive environmental impact that is probably completely outweighs the environmental impact of not using gasoline. Because on top of that, you're using electricity, which is also produced by fossil fuels. So I think very few people consider that. And then when you look at our economy, pretty much the entire economy is based on year after year producing new goods and then throwing old goods into the landfill so that you can purchase the new goods. And so I think it's important to really deconstruct what the economy is and how the economy functions. And again, I am not an economic expert. I am just a hobbyist. I read some books. So I'm probably going to butcher this, but you've probably heard this before. The economy is predicated on growth. And what that means is that every year, the economy depends upon growth. In fact, without growth, our economy and the world's economy would cease to function as we know it now. It would have to transform and it would go through an economic crisis. And what's crazy is that since the Industrial Revolution, we literally have had consistent, predictable growth. I mean, there have been years where there's been recessions and depressions and economic slowdowns, but overall the economy has consistently and predictably grown since the Industrial Revolution. Well, why does the economy have to grow? Why is the economy predicated on growth? And the answer is that we live in a debt economy. We really, I think, have more debt on the planet now than has ever existed before, exponentially. And there's debt on a number of different levels. So there's individual debt, corporate debt, and then government or central bank debt. And so on an individual level, that means having consumer credit cards, having medical loans, having car loans, having home equity loans, so basically consumer debt. And there has really never been an easier time to access the consumer debt market than today. On top of that, you have corporate debt, and then you have the government debt. And so all of these debts basically require economic growth to continue to function. And the reason why is that debt is given out with the expectation of growth. So you might take out a car loan or you might buy a fancy house on a home loan because you expect your wages to increase over time. You expect economic growth on a personal level. And then corporations take out debt because they expect that the money that they're borrowing, that they will be able to use that to grow in the future and to be able to pay off that debt. And then the same thing happens with central banks and governments where they feel like they can raise their tax revenue to be able to pay off the debt. And the reason why the economy has to grow to pay off the debt is because the debt has to be, first off, paid for in certain payments, but also the interest as well has to be serviced. So that's why the whole economic machine is predicated on growth. But when you look at the experts and you talk to a lot of really smart people, there are a lot of people out there who think that we have reached the end of growth, or that the end of growth has already passed, or that it's coming very soon. Personally, I am not really of the thought that we've reached the end of growth, but I think that no one can deny the fact that growth will end at a certain point, and it might be 100 or 200 years from now, but at a certain point, undeniably, the economy cannot continue to just grow throughout all time in perpetuity. You know, our population is peaking in 2050, so the world's population will cease to grow by year 2050. And then when you look around you, not only in the United States, but in many other countries, like in China, they've had a 10% growth rate since the 1990s. And in order to keep that train going, in order to keep that facade growing, they're literally building ghost cities or empty cities that no one lives in to keep their construction boom going. And you can Google this and YouTube this. China's also transitioning into a consumer economy because it's getting so expensive in China that they're actually moving to countries in Africa to produce their goods. So the economy, the economic machine has to function based on this growth model. But we do not have to wait until the end of growth or until we are literally forced to be environmentally friendly. And what I mean by that is I think that in the near future, or at least in 100 or 200 or 300 years, I think that there is going to be entire industries that are based off of the used economy, that are based off of true recycling. And what I mean by that is I think that people are literally going to go to landfills and are going to pull the perfectly good items out of the landfills and are going to sell them on the used market. I think that that's going to be a huge industry, is just reusing and recycling. What is so crazy that we often don't talk about is that a large percentage of the goods that we produce year after year actually never, ever have to be produced again, or at least they don't have to be produced again for another 50 to 500 years. And what I mean by that is we literally never have to produce forks, knives, plates, spoons, cups, any kind of kitchenware because we have literally so much of it. If you think about it, there's probably enough cups to occupy 70 planet Earths. Probably 90% of the cups that have ever been produced are sitting in a landfill right now, and yet every single year, hundreds of millions of cups are produced. And we simply don't need any more cups. We don't have to do this. And so I know what you're thinking, Cal, what is gonna happen to the cup manufacturers, to the companies, to the people that it employs, to our economic system as we now know it if we stop buying new cups? And the answer is that that economic model would change. And it's really not so crazy because every single year, jobs are destroyed and jobs are created. Every single year. And every single year since there's been a human economy, there has been a creation and a destruction of jobs on a yearly basis. And I think that change is the one thing that is inevitable. And I think that we should never fear an industry dying that has no longer any relevance in trying to prolong that and create, regulations that protect that industry. I think that we should embrace change and we should embrace having to learn new skills and having to try something new. So guys, how does this relate to you on a practical level? What can you do practically to reduce your environmental impact by buying more used goods? And I think the answer is to just do simple things like open an eBay account. eBay is one of the largest online marketplaces. In fact, it is the largest online marketplace for the used market. For larger items like furniture that you can't buy on eBay, go and buy them on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or any of the other apps that are out there and make a firm decision. Make a decision that you are not going to buy any of your high-priced items new. Meaning that you're going to buy your computers, your smartphones, your laptops, your houses, your cars, your furniture, all on the used market. And what's going to come out of that is that not only is it going to help the environment in a positive way, but it's also massively within your own self-interest because you're going to be saving tons of money by buying those items used. And it really doesn't make sense, I think, if you're not financially free to be purchasing everything on the used market. For lower priced items, a lot of times you can get them cheaper on Amazon. It's more convenient. However, I think if you are financially independent, then why not just buy everything used, because it is insane how little fish can grow to be big fish. And so guys, on a final note, the last thing I want to put out there is that you never have to feel fear, guilt, or shame for existing as a human. I think that a lot of times when we look at environmental documentaries that are created by, celebrities or politicians, it instills a lot of fear, guilt, and shame into the individuals that watch it. But what's interesting is that I think that the celebrities, the politicians are very interested in being perceived as environmentally friendly, but how many of them don't own 5 mega mansions across the world, or own a garage full of exotic cars, or don't jet around in private planes everywhere they go, or have the consumptive behavior patterns of 100 normal citizens? And the answer is that I don't really know of any. I'm sure there's a couple, but for the most part, I think that celebrities and politicians are interested in being perceived as liberal or perceived as environmentally friendly, but there's a big difference in being perceived as something and actually being that. And if you look at the great sages and spiritual gurus throughout all time, a common saying that they've said is, the world does not exist as you see it. Meaning that your perception is basically masking the true reality of the world, because everyone out there is saying that the planet's going downhill and that everything's being destroyed and that the Earth is going in this terrible direction. But I think that it's kind of like a human naivete to think that we really know what this planet is here for. And again, many of the great spiritual sages and gurus throughout all time have said maybe that the Earth is actually perfect as it is. That the world is actually perfect as it is, that maybe it's the perfect environment out there for spiritual growth, to be able to come here as a human, to be manifested as a human, and to be able to choose truth versus falsehood on a daily basis. Light versus darkness. I mean, there is literally so much duality on this planet and so many decisions that can be made as far as how you want to exist here. And so I think that it's within us, it's up to us to choose the light and to move in a positive direction. So I'll end it on that note. Guys, I hope you guys like this video. If you want to spread this message, if you thought this was cool, definitely hit the like button. And I'm really curious about what you guys think about this, because again, I don't hear people talk about this very often. It was a really difficult subject for me to rack my brain to even speak this video, and I'd be really curious to know what you guys thought about this. And absolutely hit the subscribe button if you want more videos like this. I have a lot of crazy ideas in my head that I have been working on, and that I'm going to be putting out a lot of similar videos to this in structure and in thought. And so if you like this video, hit the subscribe button. I'll see you guys next week. Ciao.